Welcome to Silicon Valley Nonprofits, a service of KMVT Community Media. I'm Bev Lenahan, your host. Our guest today is Tammy Cardenas, Vice President of Development and Marketing for Second Harvest Food Bank. We're happy to have you here today, Tammy. Thank you so much for coming.
Thanks for inviting me.
I think we're going to start right out with a little video clip and set the stage for Second Harvest Food Bank, and then we'll talk a little bit further.
Great.
Many people think that here in Silicon Valley, which is such an affluent area, hunger really isn't a problem. It shouldn't be a problem, but it is a problem. We're feeding nearly 250,000 people every single month. That's a staggering amount of need.
Well, that was powerful. Tammy, we hear a lot about food banks and Second Harvest Food Bank and food pantries. What is the difference between the two? Tell us about that.
That's a good question. So the difference between a food bank and a food pantry is generally scale. So Second Harvest Food Bank is serving people in over 2 counties, and food banks in general are serving large areas. Some serve more, half a state, whereas pantries are generally serving a zip code or a few zip codes or a smaller community or neighborhood area. So that's the first thing I want to impress upon you is that, and the viewers, is that it's a matter of scale. So Second Harvest is providing food to 330 nonprofit organizations at 770 different distribution sites. So these are pantries and soup kitchens and shelters and after-school programs where they're serving a low-income populations, and they need that food. So we provide that food. And if you think about us as a wholesaler and these organizations as retailers, although there's no money exchanged.
Just a lot of goods.
A lot of goods, a lot of food, and that's a good way to think about it. So really scale, we are the largest nonprofit provider of food in Santa Clara and San Mateo counties. As the video mentioned, we're serving 250,000 people, or nearly 250,000 people a month, and that number is rising. For the first time in a long time, we are starting to see our client numbers increase compared to the September and October timeframe last year. So
even with our uptick in the economy.
Especially with the uptick in the economy, because what's happening is that housing prices are increasing.
Oh, yes.
And
and rents
are going up. Mortgages, so rents are going up, which is putting more pressure on families. They're spending more of their income on rent, and they have less left over for food.
So we've been hearing a lot about nutritional values of some of these offerings that come either locally or regionally. How has Second Harvest addressed this nutrition situation? What have you done about that?
Second Harvest has been committed to nutrition, and not just food assistance, but nutritious food for, decades. We were the first food bank in the country to hire a nutritionist on staff, and over half of the food we distribute is fresh produce. So last year we distributed over 62 million pounds of food. That's 1 million meals a week.
Imagine that.
And more than half of that is fresh produce. And so we feel that it's very important because, in particular for the families we're serving, a lot of children are going to school, and we want them to be there ready to learn and hungry to learn, not just hungry.
Yes.
Not just hungry.
I remember sorting kiwis, and that's been at least 10 years ago, and I kept thinking how fortunate these families are going to be to have kiwis, because when I came to California, I didn't even know what a kiwi tasted like. So I think that's an admirable part of it. But of course, they're a lot more perishable. All these nutritious foods are a lot more perishable, which means you have to have a tight ship on getting everything from the farm to the table, right?
That's very much the case. We have an expression at Second Harvest that we have to be faster than strawberries, because I don't know if you've bought some strawberries at the store, taken them home.
Less than a week.
They're bad. So we are, the benefit of being in California is this is an agriculturally rich state.
Yes.
So we have access to a lot of excess produce that otherwise would be plowed under. It's donated to us. And we pay pennies on the pound for the freight and packaging, but we have to be able to turn that produce very quickly and get it to the people who need it. So very proud of the fact that we distribute healthy foods, and then we educate and help our clients figure out how to prepare those foods, especially the more exotic foods like turnips or squash.
I have to think about what to do with turnips.
Soup.
Oh yes, that's true. But just recently I've learned to enjoy cooking with squash a lot more, and yet if you don't know, so I'm sure that sort of nutritional preparation of food too comes as part of the education and outreach that you do.
It does. We have a team of nutritionists, and they go out. Again, we are very seasonal, so it's not similar to a grocery store always in that you go and 12 months a year you'll always see strawberries or you'll always see watermelon. We're very seasonal because we rely on the donations from farmers. And so during the fall we have a lot of squash. And so we pair that with recipes and some sampling at food distribution sites.
Good.
And we really try to encourage these foods, because the worst thing that could happen is somebody is desperately hungry, they receive the food, they don't know what it is, and they don't know what to do with it.
Yes, right.
So we would we'd never want that food to go to waste when it could go to feeding and nourishing our community.
That makes a lot of sense. Well, why is this time of the year so very important for donations?
So the holidays, I mean, I think this is true for many nonprofits. In particular, very true for us, which is the holidays. During the holidays, we raise nearly half of our revenue. And this is really to help us feed families, again, the 250,000 people who come to us every month for food, and to help us continue feeding them every month of the year for 12 months. So we rely on these donations. Most of the dollars actually come from individuals. And of course, we have some corporate support and some foundation support. But it's a really critical time of year. Again, the need is rising in the community, and we want to make sure that we're able to meet that need.
I remember my daughters, when they were younger, we would always buy one for us during the holidays and buy the same thing for somebody else, so that we could then donate it to Second Harvest and share it with somebody else. It helped us feel like we were doing a little bit of our own part. But then writing that check is another thing, and that's a conscious decision, and I know that's just as important as the food itself.
They are. I mean, it's great. Both are very important. The great thing about donating cans of food or non-perishable foods is it's something especially you can do with your children or with your community group, and it's very tangible, and you know that food you put, that can you put in that barrel is going to help a hungry person in your community. And on the flip side of that, we also really appreciate dollars because of our purchasing power. So a dollar that you spend in the store, you probably can't provide 2 nutritious meals for that, but Second Harvest can. So for every dollar you donate, we can provide 2 nutritious meals.
Leverage, right?
That's right, leverage. And the produce I was talking about, we're talking about generally, it costs us about 10 cents a pound to acquire and distribute that produce.
My goodness.
So
that's
you can't get that.
No, I can't do that. As well as I shop, I can't do that.
But it's the purchasing power, it's the relationships, it's the leverage. So we appreciate both, but of course the dollars help us. We put food in the trucks, and we truck the food out to all those distribution sites and to all those agencies. And we have to keep the fuel in the trucks and the drivers in those trucks to get the food out.
For sure. Again, in a really timely way. So I think we've got an example of a family that sort of typifies what some of the families here in the Valley are facing. Why don't you tell us about them, and then we'll take a look at a video.
Sure. So right now, our food collection barrels are all over the place, which is a great thing. They're in the supermarkets and companies and schools and churches. And there's a picture on the front of those barrels of a mother and her son. And her name is Delfina, and her son is Mauricio. And they're a local family, so she's married, and they have 3 kids. Her husband is a mechanic. And they have had a lot of pressure in terms of the housing costs, and most of his money goes, and his salary goes to rent, and there's not a lot left over. And so that's what this story is a little bit about. And this is very common. We talk to clients constantly, and we hear the same story. It's the cost of living, and it's making sure that their kids have access to the nutritious foods they need to thrive and to grow. So
they don't have to make that choice.
So they don't have to make that choice. It's a very terrible choice to make, especially when your kids are hungry. We had one client, not this particular family, but one mother tell us that she didn't have anything, her kids were hungry. She cut an apple in 4 pieces, and that's what they had between breakfast and dinner.
Goodness. Well, let's take a look at the video.
Great.
Incómodo porque ahora sí que tenemos un solo cuarto, dormimos los 4, ellos tienen su camita cada quien. De renta pagamos 1,100. Y pues los 1,100 porque mi esposo está ganando como unos 2,000 y tanto al mes. De ahí pues pagamos la renta, los biles. Los niños sentían feo, decía mi papá no tiene tiempo para nosotros o mi papá no puede ir a acompañarnos y pues él tenía que trabajar. Pues ya sabe que aquí luego nos sacan para afuera y aquí sí tenemos que pagar la renta. Pero ahorita gracias a Dios nos va bien y más que nos ayudan con la comida y todo eso ya no batallamos así como antes.
Tammy, that was very touching. Thank you for sharing that. And from the work I do, I realize that this is not an isolated case. There are thousands and thousands of families in the Valley today in a very similar circumstance. So thank you so much for the work you're doing.
Sure.
Tell us, how can the viewers help? What can they do?
Oh, there's so much that they can do. And, primarily I think what we're asking for and we're hoping people will do is to make a donation. So people can go onto our website and make a gift. And no gift is too small. Again,
or too large.
Or too large. Every dollar we translate into 2 nutritious meals, and we're a top-rated charity navigator organization, and we're very proud of that. So you can trust us with your donated dollars, and donations of food are very helpful. You can call our donor hotline, and you can also host a food and fun drive, which is kind of fun, and it builds morale and camaraderie. Or come down and volunteer at one of our distribution sites.
Might get to pack kiwis.
Might get to pack kiwis or oranges. I think apples right now.
Very good. Well, that sounds good. Thank you so much for joining us today, and all good fortune. Continue to do the great work you're doing at Second Harvest. Thank you, Tammy.
Thank you.